Hello? Hello?
Podcast Network Asia.
What's going on? This is Xavier Woods, aka Austin Creed.
I said, give me a hell yeah!
Hey, this is Zeta Zay.
Hello, WWE Universe in the Philippines. This is Charlotte.
Talent is not sexually transmitted.
You need to go back to the drawing board because your game absolutely sucks!
Hey everyone, this is Jeff Cobb.
I'm Lewis Howley. I'm Sam Spoker. We are pretty deadly. Yes, boy.
Hello, my name is Ilya Dragunov, the star, the NXT UK champion, and you're listening to the Wrestling Podcast.
You are listening to the longest-running weekly episodic Filipino wrestling podcast. This is the Wrestling Podcast. Stan C. Romoran and Chino Liao on an audio-only episode on the heels of a very wrestling-packed weekend. So before we get to this week's topic, which is all about our eulogy to NXT UK, I gotta ask you guys, buhay pa ba kayo after this supersized weekend of wrestling?
I haven't even gotten through the whole of Clash at the Castle yet. I stopped halfway through, so meron pa akong 3.5 shows na kailangan panoorin.
Nice.
By Thursday. Parang homework, guys.
Yeah. You got time. It's fine. I do appreciate the fact that one of them was on Saturday and he said like head-to-head, and even Worlds Collide and All Out didn't go head-to-head. So kahit they're competing, they knew that they shouldn't be overloading the fans, even though they did overload the fans. So there's enough time to get to it before Thursday. But I don't think this was a good idea for anyone. I think that both companies should come away with this, realizing that we shouldn't really go head-to-head on the same weekend. It's not a good, not because it's bad for business, but it's really bad for the fans. And baka mapagod sa wrestling with all the wrestling that happened.
Yeah, I'm going to co-sign that, and I'm going to speak as somebody who worked one of the shows. I'm still tired. Hindi pa ako nakakabawi physically from downing all the cold brew my body could handle right before Clash at the Castle, and then sitting through parts of All Out and Worlds Collide today in between a radio show. So, yeah, it's super tiring. I don't know any other way to put it other than I just want to take a long nap right after recording this podcast.
Diba? I mean, like, sila rin matatalo eh. Like, if the fan base decides that it's too much wrestling, nobody's gonna want to watch wrestling because it's a state of them trying to one-up each other, and it just ends up in us losing because we're so tired.
Yeah, we're just not to say now we're bitching about it. Look at these ungrateful people complaining that there's so much wrestling. I mean, like, wrestling is great. Yeah. It's just that too much of it can also be bad.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. Yun na lang. Sabihin natin. It's a good problem to have, but it's a problem nonetheless.
Oh, wag na lang sabay. Yun lang naman ang hinihiling namin.
Yeah, okay, there. I think we can all agree on those sentiments. So, our thoughts, obviously, on all the big shows that happened. All Out, Worlds Collide, Clash at the Castle. We're going to break all of that down on this Thursday's live stream. That's at 7 p.m. on Kumu and on Facebook.com/Wrestling Podcast. But for this episode, we're going to talk about NXT UK, which had its final ever episode over the weekend. So, you eulogize natin for this episode. But first, so much happened in our very vibrant Patreon community, and you can be part of that as well. And here's how you can do that.
Yeah, so again, as you guys just heard, we had 2 big shows that we put up for the patrons live. So a lot of fun was had by all. And if you want to be a part of that, if you want to experience what it's like watching wrestling live with us, with your co-hosts that you are listening to right now in real time, and get our thoughts in real time, diba? All you got to do is subscribe to our Patreon. There is a lot of time to subscribe for the next pay-per-view. It is at patreon.com/Wrestling Podcast. For as low as $5 or 280 pesos, you get access to our Discord community where all these conversations and events take place. You get access to our exclusive review content where I give my thoughts, Rowan gives his thoughts on the weekly shows, Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, NXT, Rampage, as well as pay-per-views, live events as well, MWF as well, local wrestling as well. And then we also have merch, our line of merch that patrons can get for free. One of our line for free. And if we do pasabays, which will likely be very soon, you can also be a part of that and get dibs. And again, patreon.com/wrestling podcast for as low as 280 pesos.
Oh, yung
All
mga
right.
nakakamiss kay Rowan dyan, pwede nyo siyang kitain sa Discord.
Yeah, he's
Diba?
very
He's,
active.
super active during the live streams.
So yun, that's how you can be part of the Wrestling Podcast patron community. All right, let's say goodbye formally to NXT UK. They did also say goodbye na rin on social media, and with the final episode of NXT UK having aired Friday Manila time, that wraps up a run that really started in 2017 with the very first United Kingdom Championship tournament. And then after the 2018 tournament, not long after that, nagsimula na yung actual show. So I guess the show itself was a little over 4 years across, what was it, 150, 200 episodes. What are your thoughts coming out of NXT UK formally closing its doors?
I didn't know why they had to close NXT UK to have NXT Europe, because NXT UK was essentially NXT Europe. It just so happened that it was based in London, pero it did feature the best of European talents. Like you got Walter, now Gunther, Pete Dunne, not Pete Dunne, Ilya Dragunov pala, the German talents, the Italian talents, Spanish talents like A-Kid/Axiom. So it really was a melting pot for European wrestling. So I don't understand why they couldn't just rebrand the show to NXT UK and not cancel it. Rebrand everything, rebrand the titles, make them NXT Europe instead of NXT UK. You can just change the name, diba? So I don't get why you had to close down shop and really remake this and then let go a lot of your talent when you can just sign on a bunch of people and tour around Europe.
Baka parang ano lang yan. Remember how, I don't know if you guys know this, but Showtime, the ABS-CBN show, rebranded itself to It's Showtime.
Oh, was it? Did they close?
When they did that, they said, magtatapos na ang Showtime. And then the very next day, they had this whole ceremony with a firing barrel. And then the next episode after that, it's Showtime.
Was it like an April Fool's joke?
It's exactly the same thing Ro is saying, diba? Parang hindi naman ganun kalaki yung difference niya eh. Diba? It's exactly the same thing. NXT, you know, what's in a name? Yun lang yung sasabihin ko. What's in a name?
Unlike NXT UK rather, hindi naman nawalan ng trabaho yung mga hosts ng It's Showtime.
No, there is still a Showtime though.
I mean, like when they made that rebranding, wala naman
wala. See, this is still the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the exact same product. They just added a pronoun to the beginning of it. So, bakit, diba? Ganun lang naman yun eh. They just added a pronoun to the beginning of the word, but it's the exact same product. Itong NXT UK tsaka NXT Europe, diba? UK is in Europe, so bakit nila kailangan guluhin?
Nag-Brexit, diba?
From the EU stand, not from Brexit was from the continent.
Not from the continent.
Can you do that?
No, I don't think you can like leave a continent.
Yeah, diba?
But anyway, syempre hindi rin natin matatanggal from the conversation yung fact that there were a lot of talent who were let go. If you go to the Wikipedia page of the WWE personnel, wala ng NXT UK tab, so it's just the unassigned wrestlers, and these are the only holdovers from NXT UK that did not make the transition yet to NXT 2.0. Ilan na lang talaga sila, like I'm guessing 7 or 8 wrestlers, maybe a little bit more, like Ilya Dragunov, Rampage Brown, I believe Oliver Carter is still there. From the women, the only name I remember is Aaliyah James, I think. So yeah, I don't remember everyone else.
Meiko.
Ayun, Meiko Satomura, who obviously was part of Worlds Collide today. So yeah, almost everybody else, especially if you're a regular viewer of NXT UK, they also said goodbye na rin on social media. People like Trent Seven, si Ashton Smith, the guys from Die Familia outside of Charlie Dempsey, the women, sina Zaya Brookside, etc. All of them said goodbye na rin on social media. And you know, all of these wrestlers, they're all very talented naman. Like I'm sure they'll be able to land on their feet. I'm sure wherever they end up going, they will be assets. But I just don't know how NXT Europe is going to start. Like, syempre, yung mga holdovers, those are probably your building blocks. And then where do they go from here?
I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, ang concern ko lang dito is the older wrestlers eh. Like, the younger guys have more time on their hands, diba? But when you're a wrestler in the same age range as Rampage Brown and Mako, parang, do you have enough time in your career to be doing this? Is it smart for the WWE to invest in seasoned veterans like Rampage Brown and Mako? And kung ikaw si Mako and Rampage Brown, would you want to spend the latter half of your career waiting for something that might not include you? Diba? Parang may time factor din kasi siya for if you're an older talent.
I think for the people that you mentioned, yung role nila is magiging player coach. So
yeah, that's Mako's role right now.
Yeah, exactly, diba? So there will be a role for them, especially if the crux of or the majority of the talents that you're gonna sign from Europe are the younger guys. So talagang I think hindi naman sila mawawalan dun. And if I were them, if I were that advanced in age, I would want to be a part of a company that is the biggest wrestling company in the world, which I assume pays like the biggest wrestling company in the world, while having that job security that comes with it. So because they were held over, I don't think that they have anything to be afraid of.
In terms of the stories, I thought it was pretty fitting na even though hindi nila sinadya, the very last match of the show was Tyler Bate versus Trent Seven. So in a way, it really ties back to the origins of NXT UK, which really began with Tyler Bate being the first United Kingdom champion, and then yung story nila as Mustache Mountain, again, it's not like sinadya nila, but they were able to wrap a bow around that at least, na Tyler Bate and Trent Seven had their blow-off match for the United Kingdom Championship. There was a sense of, I guess, finality to it, a little bit of closure. But for the other stories, for example, si Blair Davenport, she had just won yung right to challenge Meiko Satomura again, which happened at Worlds Collide, so good for her. But a lot of the other stories were left up in the air. Stories like yung kina Di Familia, yung story ng Heritage Cup Championship where Noam Dar had just regained it from Mark Coffey on the last episode of NXT UK. Doon ako nasasayangan first and foremost because I'd gotten really invested in NXT UK as a show, especially when it came back at the end of 2020.
Yeah, super serendipitous nga yung final main event. But that's about the only part that was serendipitous. So sayang din. Oh well, but at least they have that.
Chino, what did you like about NXT UK? Because I think pre-pandemic, we never really talked about it, you and I.
It's more of a, well, nanonood naman ako, but sporadically. It's not something I would wait for. It's not something I would keep up to date with. NXT in general, mas NXT stateside ako, mas black and gold ako. And because of my exposure to the black and gold brand, there we go, I was exposed to a little bit of NXT UK, diba, with their excursions of talent na pupunta doon minsan, diba? So I love the United Kingdom Championship tournament, where we first got to meet the likes of Pete Dunne, diba? And I also just watched that because I started watching the Mae Young Classic na doon lumabas sila Rhea Ripley and sila Toni Storm, diba? So yung exposure ko to NXT UK is kind of as a byproduct of me watching other brands. And yeah, may mga hindi ako masundan. I'm not really a fan of British products. Kumbaga, like I'm not Anglophobic. It's just not my cup of tea, ironically. So I've never really something I prioritized. However, I just wanted to, keep up with the times and enjoy ko naman siya kahit paano.
Mm-hmm. Ikaw, Ro, you were watching it from the get-go. Like, you really followed it to the point of you even writing a review column at a certain point.
Yeah. I started with the United Kingdom Championship tournament kasi back then British wrestling kasi had this reputation of being like strong style, like Japanese. So the modern British wrestling really was influenced by the mainstream Japanese style. So when somebody put on indie promotions from the UK, I made sure to watch, and I liked that Triple H put together a tournament of the best United Kingdom wrestlers, so not just from England, but from all over as well. And because it was not touched by Vince McMahon's influence, I wanted to watch it. And as we all know, it did turn out really well because it showcased yung style talaga na back then hindi pa ganun ka mainstream sa WWE. So WWE still insisted on the WWE style, which is a lot slower and a lot more less is more. It was only until after they signed a bunch of the ROH guys and those guys came into vogue that we have the style that we know now, the modern style. But doon siya mas na showcase it. And then because back then as well we had black and gold NXT that was really, really good, I knew that NXT UK was also going to be that good in the same vein. So it was two concurrent NXT products, slightly different but also the same quality, and mas na pronounce siya when especially when NXT became NXT 2.0 and kind of reverted back to the WWE mainstream style, diba? So NXT UK became the last holdover of Triple H's vision for NXT, and doon siya mas na-emphasize na sobrang galing ng mga wrestlers to that. That's why I ended up writing the column, because I really enjoyed how great it was despite the pandemic and despite NXT becoming NXT 2.0.
I actually didn't follow NXT UK until the pandemic. I mean, I knew the wrestlers. I knew Gallows. I knew Volta. I knew of Ilya Dragunov. I would probably watch clips here and there, but I just didn't have the time for NXT UK. And I think I only really started watching it nung naghahabol ako leading up to NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, because I knew that I was going to watch Volta versus Pete Dunne. So that was my first taste talaga of the actual product. And then when the pandemic happened, you know, we were all stuck at home. We were bored, diba? So when NXT UK came along, I was like, okay, that's one more show with wrestlers I actually know. So when I started getting into it, I was like, wow, this is really fun. I'd been missing out. So sobrang enjoy ko siya, especially at a time during the pandemic when we were all looking forward to alleviate our boredom with some wrestling. And I was very impressed with how they were able to just continue putting out content after that little layoff because of COVID. So that's a testament to everybody who was involved. Nagawa nila ng paraan. And I would venture out to say that in the WWE umbrella, sila yung huling show who kept performing in front of no fans. Kasi at a certain point, diba, the main roster brought in the PC students, the PC trainees, diba, to cheer, and then they had the Thunderdome for a while until, I would say, 2022, early part of this year. NXT UK had 0 fans. Those are super difficult conditions to perform in. So a whole lot of credit to everybody who performed under those conditions. And yun nga, tulad ng sabi mo, Ro, sobrang na-appreciate ko sa NXT UK how it became the 1-hour NXT that we used to have in the 2010s that we no longer really had when 2.0 came into the picture. So that's what I'm gonna miss most about NXT UK, that really solid hour of wrestling that I can just appreciate from start to finish. Because as much as I want to say that about Rampage, it's just not as must-watch to me as NXT UK was.
To be fair, NXT UK wasn't always must-watch. So, diba, they taped, like NXT used to, they taped in batches, diba? So that means your main eventers won't always appear on the show. So there were times, when I was reviewing NXT UK, there were times that, okay, the matches are good, but the stories were not must-watch. So that's kind of also why I also fell out of reviewing it, because not every episode was gonna have Volta versus Ilya Dragunov, and there was a time when Volta didn't appear for months on end, and they were grappling with the lack of a top title. So that was pretty bad, and it wasn't always perfect, but you can always count on the wrestlers to put on good matches because they put a premium on the work rate style of match.
Meron ding mga times during the run of UK wherein they sobrang rock and roll talaga nung NXT UK. May mga times na nagpo-perform sila sa festival sa ilalim ng tent.
Yeah. Yung download festival.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they did that a few times, and it's like sobrang hindi ko ma-imagine na WWE production kayo pero sa tent kayo nagpo-perform. It's not anything. It's not nothing against tent performers.
No, it was a music
there.
festival. That's
Diba?
why.
Kasi, so
they
yun
were-
nga eh. So parang medyo too indie yung feel nun. But then at the same time, you are watching technically independent wrestlers, diba? Signed under the WWE banner. So I get that. But yung may mga times lang na yun nga, when you talk about not being able to be invested in the story, ako means dumating din ako sa point na I wasn't invested because of the production value.
Sticking with the stories, something I loved about NXT UK was how I can remember even the non-main event stories. And that's not something I can say about 2.0 all the time. Or sometimes, pre-Triple H on the main roster, yung main roster mismo. Like, it's hard to really juggle all of these stories, and as a fan, to remember all of them, it does take a bit of effort. But with NXT UK, for some reason, they did a good job of making me, as a fan, remember all the smaller stories. For example, I can't forget yung arc ni Saxon Huxley nung tinuturuan siya kung paano maging refined, or yung story with the Familia stories with the different groups that they feuded with, like Gallows, or Kenny Williams and his feud with Amir Jordan and how si Tiger Turan came into the picture. Like, these were not stories for any championships, pero naaalala ko siya, tumatak siya sa akin, and yun nga, parang it coupled with my attachment to the brand even more. Mas nagustuhan ko siya kasi parang I didn't need to be attached to championships, and I don't always like these grudge matches, but the fact na nasundan ko siya on NXT UK says a lot about how they were telling these stories. So that was something that I appreciated.
Yeah, yun nga, they did do a good job of highlighting the mid-card stories once a month. Pero yun nga, you don't always tune in for the mid-card stuff. Like, I like Kenny Williams versus Amir Jordan, but I didn't want that to main event my episode of NXT UK, diba? So I wanted to see Walter all the time. I wanted to see Dragunov all the time. And I didn't get that. So that was kind of the downside of taping in batches.
There's also kind of the downside of having an hour.
Yeah.
And having such a deep roster, diba? Because naintindihan ng NXT UK, because it was a Triple H product, naintindihan nila na hindi kailangan lahat ng wrestlers sa TV all the time, something AEW tends to do a lot.
Yeah.
Diba? So in that 1 hour, they really gave people their time to shine. It's just that sometimes hindi natin gusto yung nag-shine, diba? And that's part of anything, really. You can't love everything 100%. So parang nagigets ko yung point nyo na hindi siya invested material all the time. But then there were some times na pag nanonood ako, I've become pleasantly surprised by the performers. Diba? I didn't expect to love them as much. I didn't expect to be an Isla Dawn fan. But then naging Isla Dawn fan ako. I wasn't expecting to be an Alba Fire FKA Kaylee Ray fan. But then that also ended up happening even before she became a champion. So parang there were points in time that I became pleasantly surprised by the amount of talent that roster had.
There was also something distinctly different about the flavor and the presentation of the show. Now, even though you know you're watching a WWE product, it's something you touched on kanina, Chino. When I started watching it regularly during the pandemic, it just really felt different. From the colors na ginagamit to the way that they were doing camera work, even the way that the hard cam and yung orientation niya is very different from a normal WWE show. It just really set itself apart. And my dad and I would watch it together kasi I would be having lunch nandun yung iPad ko sa side and my dad could like hear it. And he would be very confused. Like, hindi niya alam kung WWE ba yung pinapanood ko o hindi. And he would ask me like, WWE ba yan? And I'd be like, yeah, it's NXT UK. Because of the way that Andy Shepherd and Nigel McGuinness would have their banter and the style in which they did commentary. So sobrang na-appreciate ko yun kasi as someone who's long wanted NXT Asia, it really served as the blueprint for what could be something that would exist in our region down the road.
But we wanted NXT Asia, we wanted to see NXT Japan, whatever NXT in our neck of the woods was, kasi it would have helped a lot of guys. It would have helped the scene. And William Regal speaks a lot to this because there were early criticisms of NXT UK that it kind of put the indies in the UK out of business because it became the biggest show in town. Diba?
Yeah.
But on the flip side, on the workers' side, on the wrestlers' side, it gave them steady opportunities. It kept them employed. It kept the best employed, and it gave yung mga aspirants something to aim towards. Diba? So if you were a young British wrestler trying to make a living, why wouldn't you want a steady job employed with the WWE, diba? So, I've always liked that part of it, even though I'm not from the UK. I appreciated that there was a company that tried to set the standard, talaga.
See, Pete Dunne said something about this, na parang he defended the fact that the NXT UK sort of took over, pun intended, the independent scene in the UK because it provided jobs for people, diba? It provided jobs for somebody like him, who was a journeyman all up until his NXT tenure, diba? Nagpaiba-iba siya, and he had the family to feed. So, paano mo bubuhayin yung family mo on something like that? So, at least ito, may stable income ka, diba? Lumalabas ka sa TV, you know what your schedule is like. Hindi ka ngarag, well, ngarag ka because 300 days a year, but hindi ka ngarag in the sense that you go travel from town to town and then nababayaran ka with a hot dog and a handshake. Right? So this time around, at least it's a more stable source of income. And for people like Pete Dunne who have families, that means a lot.
Yeah. Yung criticism na nabanggit mo, Ro, it's very similar to the criticism na, oh, look at these basketball leagues in Taiwan and Japan and Korea taking away our local basketball players. It's the same principle, diba? Na the cream rises to the top, they get the better jobs, and then whatever jobs there are locally, the more opportunities then for the local talents to make a livelihood out of their craft. So something like NXT UK having existed and having the run that it did was, I would say, a net positive because of what it did for the industry at large.
Yeah, as a wrestler, we all just want to get paid. We're killing ourselves out there, and the fact that we can't get paid is kind of what deters a lot of people from the industry.
Yeah, I mean, in general, everybody just wants to get paid, diba? No matter what industry you're in. And yung mga nagsasabi na, oh, nalulugi kami dito. It's just that those people aren't the people who get paid, diba? It's just that there's a fact of life. So parang pag nabayaran ka, hindi ka naiinik eh. So...
Yeah, plus it goes underreported that the NXT UK talents, a lot of them had very unique contract situations compared to the main roster. Marami na ring nagkwento nito over the years na they would get signed to an NXT UK contract but they would be able to work independent dates. Diba? We saw a lot of the European wrestlers contracted with NXT UK also plugging shows that they were at outside of WWE, whether that's in the UK or the rest of Europe. So I would say na they actually had a decent situation if they were able to do that.
Yeah. That was a good thing kasi Triple H didn't want to shut down the independent scene talaga. Like, he wanted to steal from it, yes, pero syempre he had to feed it kasi that's where he was gonna get his future talent then. So you can't kill the others surrounding you, the ones that rely on you as well. So it's a business. It's increasingly complex. There's an entire ecosystem surrounding it, and I'm glad that he wasn't like Vince in that regard na talagang i-isolate niya yung sarili niya from the competition and from the other smaller players that helped inadvertently get them to where they are.
Yeah, that was something that I thought was pretty admirable about their setup over there. As we begin to wind down here, let's just talk about yung favorite moments natin from NXT UK. Were there any favorite stories or favorite matches that you'll take away from this NXT UK run?
Diba, Rose said at the beginning of this episode na NXT or UK wrestling rather had this reputation of being strong style, and I think NXT UK had a lot to do with that kasi doon lang ako nakakita ng all-out sapakan matches, the likes of Walter versus Tyler Bate, diba? Tyler Bate versus Pete Dunne. Pete Dunne versus Walter. A lot of this involved the same people more or less. Pero the impact that they showcased in all those hits, it's bone chilling. And nagustuhan ko yun about that sort of wrestling because up until that moment, hindi pa natin nakikita yan sa WWE. We're just coming off Clash at the Castle. Gunther versus Sheamus was one of those exact same matches that I'm talking about. Kasi nagsasapakan lang sila ng 30 minutes sa loob ng ring. And it's so awe-inspiring to see.
Well, the greatest moment of NXT UK TV was Ilya Dragunov versus Walter 1, that from 2020. But also, if we're counting yung proto NXT UK days in the NXT UK Championship, the United Kingdom Championship tournament. Back then, it was a WWE United Kingdom Championship.
Yeah.
The first one was really good. Tyler Bate versus Pete Dunne. Great stuff. Proved that Tyler Bate is a phenom at his very young age. Pete Dunne as well. A lot of those things. I especially liked the very first Heritage Cup Championship tournament. I really, really enjoyed their introduction of British rules and how they pretty much honored that tradition of British wrestling by giving their own take on it. So that was pretty fun, and it was a great moment for all involved. Everyone proved themselves a worthy talent. They showed why they were signed to WWE, and it was just really great TV. The British rounds matches are some of the best wrestling TV you'll find in WWE.
Yeah, I'm gonna springboard of what Rose said and say na my favorites were the tournaments and the Heritage Cup matches. Yung tournaments kasi NXT UK never really had, or very rarely had, these storylines where some rando goes out and challenges the champion, which is a typical trope na on the main roster. Diba? That's why AEW came out and said, oh, we have a ranking system. With NXT UK, there were almost always tournaments or number one contendership matches to determine who was next in line. And I appreciated that little detail because it meant that whoever was challenging really earned their spot. And it wasn't a matter of whoever just took the mic and said, I got next. So sobrang na-appreciate ko yun from NXT UK storytelling. And then the second, the Heritage Cup matches was not something I thought I would enjoy. And very limited naman kasi exposure ko to British rules matches heading into NXT UK. And when I saw the prototype of the Manila rules match ng MWF, I didn't understand it at all. I was like, how can you have psychology in a match na structured into rounds? So I didn't understand it. But when the Heritage Cup rules matches came into the fold, I was like, okay, I get it now. This is how you tell a story in this very unique type of match structure. So those two things I really appreciated coming out of NXT UK, and I'm really gonna miss those now that the show has said goodbye.
I am gonna miss it. I'm a little sad that I've taken it for granted. Dami pa akong hindi napapanood ng episodes that we've talked about here on this very pod. However, I'm hopeful for NXT Europe kasi in as much as I want to see, I want NXT UK to continue. We are getting NXT Europe in its place, and sana successful yung NXT Europe to a point na magkakaroon ng NXT Asia, NXT Southeast Asia, di ba? Na parang a rising tide lifts all boats. I've said that many times here on the pod, and sana totoo to in this case.
I'm gonna miss the NXT UK talent that we've come to love over the years, but I don't think I'm gonna miss NXT UK as a concept because I think NXT Europe is just gonna continue the same thing. Like Chino said, it really is its showtime in WWE. So I think it's gonna be the same thing, right? Like, why would you mess with that formula, especially when it worked for NXT and when it worked for the people that they brought over from the UK to the US, diba? So it's gonna be the same thing, but with more European talent, probably more from Germany, Italy, France, Spain. So meron mga scenes dun eh. Hindi lang natin alam masyado kasi hindi naman tayo taga dun. And they're not as broadcast as the American stuff, right? So I think they're gonna take that, and I hope that they don't apply the NXT 2.0 formula. There's a chance that it will, pero I don't think it will then. I think, I hope that they're going to use what made NXT UK work all through these years and use that to develop the next generation of European talent.
Yeah, exciting times pa rin, even though it's kind of sad na. We did see a lot of the NXT UK talents we've come to know and love get released. I'm excited to see what new names and faces will come to know through NXT Europe. Diba? If Triple H was able to bring the likes of Ilya and Volta into WWE's fold, I don't know who's next, and that is the exciting part of NXT Europe, which will be making its way onto our screen sometime in 2023. So thank you very much to NXT UK, all of the talents, production crew, writers, coaches involved, and good luck to everybody. Kasi I'd like to think na as a whole, it's still a very promising time in the sport of professional wrestling. Now, as we end the podcast, as always, you can support the show through your online shopping, and you can do that through one of two ways. The first is through Lazada.
Yep, 99 is happening this Friday. I think it's gonna last for a couple of days, or maybe just one day for Lazada. The affiliate link is podlink.co/IAM, podlink.co/letters IAM. Type that in your mobile browser, add the cart, and check out from the app. What you buy will help us do what we do here in the podcast at no extra cost.
And the other way to do that is through your online shopping over on Shopee.
Yep, the affiliate link for our Shopee affiliate program. All you got to do is use the affiliate link podlink.co/W9X, podlink.co/letter W, the number 9 and the letter X. Again, type that in a mobile browser and check out from the app so you can help us do what we do here in the podcast at no extra cost.
All right. And if you love the conversations that we have here on the show, whether it's audio-only episodes like this, where we can pay tribute to certain topics like NXT UK, or go through a listicle like we've been doing in previous weeks, hit us up on TikTok and Twitter. Let us know what you want to talk about. It's at Wrestling2XPod. You can ask questions, you can leave comments, and just be part of the conversation, even though we're not having a podcast. And then, syempre, there's always an open invite to be part of our live streams. We've got a very active community that comments every live stream that happens Thursdays at 7 p.m. on Kumu at Wrestling Pod, and on Facebook.com/Wrestling Podcast. You can follow us individually and keep the conversation going as well. It is at Monday Night Rowan for Rowan ASH, at Chino Supersized, at Rowas War, and at _Stancy for me. Thank you very much to all of our producers over at PNA for doing the work that they do behind the scenes. And thank you for following the podcast, subscribing, liking, and sharing the pod and letting people know that we exist. And as we get out of here, on behalf of Romoran and Chino Liao, my name is Stancy, reminding everyone to keep your masks on, get your vaccines and boosters if and when you can, and we'll see you this Thursday for our next live stream of the Wrestling Podcast. We're out.
Peace.
The views and opinions expressed by the podcast creators, hosts, and guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy and position of Podcast Network Asia, the hosts of the program, or other programs of the network. Any content provided by the people on the podcast are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.